Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Three Technique, the college football podcast at the intersection of the X's and O's and the Jimmies and the Joes. Welcome into the Week 2 live reaction show here late on a Saturday night. We just had Mississippi State pull off the upset against Arizona State. Oklahoma finishes business against the Michigan Wolverines. And South Florida pulls off a monumental upset, their first ever victory over the University of Florida in the Swamp. We are here to talk about it all. We're here to eulogize the playoff hopes for the Iowa Hawkeyes. I have a statement that I prepared for you, the Jimmies and the Joes, but we'll get to that in due time. Trey Reeves, Garrett Turney, I'm Mitch Mason. Fellas, fun Saturday afternoon. And Trey, you wrote in the Saturday storylines that the folks that were maligning week 2, saying it's a sleepy Saturday, that the slate is no fun, they're not to be trusted. And what do we know time and time again, every single week, that you overlook a matchup, that you overlook a block of games, sure enough, chaos ensues. And that happened all day today.
Yeah, you'd think we'd learn by now as a college football populace, but apparently we haven't because all week long, I just kept seeing people complaining. Like, as if one of our 13 or 14 college football Saturdays that we get every year, just it being one of those precious few isn't enough. Uh, yeah, guys, it's just like a coach would preach to his team. You can't overlook anything because we got amazing results today. We had amazing games left and right. I had trouble filling out my quad box tonight while I was figuring out what to watch alongside Oklahoma and Michigan because there were so many great finals and games going down to the wire. Just because there's not two teams with little numbers next to them doesn't mean there's not going to be amazing games and big upsets like we saw yet again today.
Absolutely. Full slate from the morning all the way through the night. I mean, heck, we just had Michigan State polish off a double overtime win over Boston College. Garrett, I mean, this season has gotten off to a running start. And I feel like in week 1, we had to caution ourselves that, hey, don't overreact. We don't know the full story. We have just one data point. But it also felt like in week 2, every little gleaning that we took away from those data points, maybe wipe the slate clean and just start completely over.
There were moments when I was filling out my notes for these that I would just write something and then go, wait, hold on, I got to go back on this because I thought I knew something. And then I didn't know it anymore. And I had the inkling that things were going to get crazy by the end of that first time slot window because it was kind of chalk for a little while there in the earlier window. And I had a feeling, I was like, okay, so things are going pretty normal. That's not how college football works. We're about to start getting some upsets. And sure enough, things started going haywire in that afternoon time slot. So I'm at the end of the day, I'm just kind of sitting here wondering what I know and what I don't know at this point. And I'm kind of excited to just reflect on it and see what we think.
Yeah. Well, a lot to get to here tonight. Big thank you to our fantasy partner this year, our presenting sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. You can use our code 3TechPod, play just $5 and instantly get $50 in bonus fantasy funds. Trey, we were playing this weekend. I came dangerously close to hitting a 4-leg parlay.
You were did we ever find out why you didn't hit that? Like, was it a doghouse situation?
I have not seen. If you were following along over on our social media, Isaac Brown hit on Friday night. We started the weekend great. Kevin Jennings threw an interception, hit that. Casey Concepcion check over or higher on the yards that he picked up. But Michael Trigg, tight end for Baylor, in a shootout, in a game that went
15 targets last week.
Way over the total. Gets to 38 yards pretty quickly. The number was 48 and a half. And then he did something wrong, or maybe he was injured. I don't know. He had his helmet on the sideline, but was behind the offensive staff. Looked like a doghouse situation. Basically didn't play the entire second half. And he cost me a nice little hit to start my weekend. So we'll get into Baylor SMU. That was a classic as well. But let's start with Oklahoma and Michigan. That was the featured game of the week. The Sooners win 24-13 over Michigan. And Trey, I'll start with you because you were on the preview show. This game went pretty much according to how we said it was going. Both defenses stood on their heads. Both defenses played well, really from the word go. But it was John Mateer, the more veteran quarterback at home with better wide receivers, better offensive weapons, I think, in general, around him that ultimately come out on top. The Sooners win by double digits, and they do cover that 5.5 number at home.
We love when we're able to actually hit one of those predictions, right? We had a couple
Feels
of those
good.
today. We'll talk about another one
Good.
in a little bit. One of them was low hanging fruit that maybe always happens. But yeah, the difference was John Mateer versus Bryce Underwood. And that's not to say that Bryce Underwood had a bad game. The numbers aren't going to jump off the page for you, obviously, with that Oklahoma defense able to contain him pretty well. Justice Haynes had some that big moment, of course, to start the second half, get Michigan back in it. But yeah, the difference is simple. Sometimes there's a simple answer in football. We don't have to dig very deep into the stats or in the box score, look for something on the film. It was just a better quarterback and a more veteran quarterback. Like you said, John Mateer willed his team to victory against a really good Michigan defense. And Bryce Underwood is in his second game of college football. And maybe it's a different story if he's played as many games as John Mateer has, but his head was spinning a little bit, and that's totally fine. He will still be fine. You saw the flashes of how he is going to be in the future for Michigan. But right now, this is John Mateer's moment, and he seized it.
Yeah, and I think that's important to mention. I thought Bryce Underwood looked fine. Certainly some growing moments, some things that they've got to get cleaned up as an offense up there in Ann Arbor. For Oklahoma, I thought a couple of things. I thought number one, Mateer is clearly an X factor, and he's going to be something that, as a defensive coordinator in the SEC, I don't know that you can ever really prepare for, right? I mean, he's got that Johnny Manziel-esque quality where you think he's going one way, he plants his foot in the ground, he's cutting and he's running 20 yards across the field the other way. So I do think that is certainly something that's going for Oklahoma. Deion Burks had a big night. The wide receiving core looked a lot better for the Sooners tonight as opposed to what we saw last year when, quite frankly, most of those guys were hurt all throughout the season. The broadcast talked about that. And I also thought the offensive line looked much improved from breaks that we even saw last week in Illinois State. Now, not perfect, a lot to clean up still, and they weathered the storm against a very physical front seven from Michigan. But those were the positives that I saw from Oklahoma. The one concern that I do have, and Garrett, I'll throw it to you to talk Michigan as well. It took Mateer running the ball like 20 times in order to keep this offense moving, to keep Michigan's defense on their heels. We know that there are going to be a lot of SEC defenses that are the caliber of the Wolverines defense, maybe even a little bit better. I don't know that that's going to be as sustainable as what Oklahoma fans would probably like to see it at. I think C. Jackson Arnold from these first 2 weeks at Auburn. Anytime you have a running quarterback, that's an amazing plus, but I don't know if it works all throughout the season as your primary strategy.
Yeah, volume's going to be an issue. Obviously, he can't take that many hits, or even just rush the ball that many times over the course of the season. He can do it, and he can be effective at it, but it is going to wear you down. And I think the thing that I came away from this game with was just the idea that there was a concept with some people and a couple people in the comment section that thought, hey, this Mateer guy, like, what has he really shown you, right? He played some bad teams last year and blew them up, and then he played some good teams, maybe didn't look quite as good. He's pretty overrated. I think Mateer went out there and beat any allegation that you had for him. He is a straight up baller. He went out there and he gamed, and that's just all that he needed to do. Very much like you guys said, just kind of willing his team to victory. But yeah, there's going to have to be something coming in to kind of balance that out. You're going to need to see a little bit more out of the run game from people not named John Mateer. He cannot carry the ball, 19 times, 74 yards as your leading rusher.
Yeah.
You got to find somebody else to kind of spell that. And they brought in guys who should be able to do that. Barnes looked good in spots. Like, they notched in that backfield. You're just going to have to find ways to kind of rest that a little bit. But the good news for him is that defense on the Oklahoma side is good enough to probably not require him to score all that often. I thought they did a fantastic job harassing Bryce Underwood the entire night. And I actually was pretty impressed with the Michigan offense overall, in the fact that I think they looked better than I expected them to. Just nothing was coming easy. It was like every single, even if it's a comeback route, the DB's on you, right? You're getting harassed at that point. Even if you're going to get away from the pressure, you got to sprint to get around it, and the window's closing, and you got to find a way to get the ball out. And so I was happy with the way that Michigan played overall, but I mean, gosh, that OU defense is going to be something fierce when it comes time for league play, and I think that's going to be their X factor for the year. Is even if Mateer's got to slow it down, even if Mateer gets like a bum ankle halfway through the season or something like that, they're going to be able to stop enough teams that he's not going to have to go out there and blow them up. He didn't blow them up tonight. 24 points isn't necessarily lighting up the scoreboard, but it sure looked good enough when your defense is out there and you don't really have any fear that outside of a busted play, they're going to give up too much.
Yeah, nice little night for Mateer's Privateers. But on the other side with Bryce Underwood, we talked about this being his first road start. It was a difficult environment. Nobody really just walks into Norman and pushes the Sooners around. 9 of 24 for 142 total yards. He averaged 5.9 yards per completion. The casuals, the overreaction on Monday morning is going to be that Underwood is overwhelmed. And I've already seen it actually on Twitter. Some folks saying that, this is what Michigan paid for. This is the guy that they spent, $12 million plus on. Trey, you're shaking your head. I think two things can be true at the same time. I think number one, Bryce Underwood could have gone to the school of hard knocks tonight. He looked really rough. He looked like a freshman quarterback making his first ever road start in a hostile environment. But two, I think that Michigan has a lot of things to hope for. And if they view this year in the proper context where, yes, you could make a playoff run, that's certainly on the table. But I think if this year is viewed more as a developmental year, you go 9-3, you prepare for next year, and then you reload. To me, that puts this game in a much different light than, 9-24 and the sky is falling.
I think he just needs a more famous last name, right? And then we'd only be focusing on the positives.
It's his dad's fault, is what you're saying.
Had to slide that in there. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I think that anyone that was expecting him to just roll into Norman and put up 300 yards is kidding themselves. Like that's just not going to happen in any realistic scenario. So yeah, I had Michigan at 9-3 preseason. I had them losing this game. I have them having trouble in two other big road spots that they have coming up. If you peek ahead at their schedule, in their first 6 games, they are also going to Nebraska and to USC. Those are going to be two very difficult road spots as well. And I think if you find a way to get one of those other two, you should be doing cartwheels, because the back half of the schedule is really, really manageable for Michigan until you get to that Ohio State game. And it's an Ohio State team that you've beaten for 5 years in a row now, or 4 years in a row now, whatever it is. So there's an opportunity to even grow this year. I think that you never want to punt to next year to school like Michigan, and I certainly don't think they should be doing that. But if they can split these next 2 big road games, you're in business, and you could maybe even start talking about a potential playoff run down the back half this year.
Well, and one point kind of to the idea that, you were talking about Bryce Underwood's line being a little bit rough tonight and not to expect too much out of it. There's going to be a lot of games tonight that I feel like we're going to talk about where if you were just watching box scores, it's going to lie to you. Like, this line from Bryce Underwood doesn't look super impressive, but if you watch the game and you actually were tuned in, I don't think anybody's really worried about Bryce Underwood and where he's going, right? Like, I don't think anybody can be worried about his performance tonight. It was just very clearly a better defense. There's going to be a couple of games like that tonight where, again, the box score watchers aren't going to have a very good time with this one when they look at some of the ways these games finished up. And, if you're looking at Justice Haynes and saying that he had a great night, well, he had a 75-yard run and then looked pretty pedestrian, right? Like, it's going to be a lot of that tonight with a lot of some final scores and some stat lines and numbers. So let's, again, to some of the immediate Twitter overreaction, let's pump the brakes. He's, making his second start. It's in a really, really rough spot. Oklahoma was very clearly the better team. For my money, I think they're probably one of the most proven. They've actually shown you something good teams in the SEC so far. Clearly, I think a front runner at this point. So I don't think there's any shame in losing to a team like that in a tight one, on the road.
Oklahoma goes to Temple next week, a 2-0 Temple team under Casey Keeler. Michigan plays Central Michigan next week before they go to Nebraska, who the Cornhuskers, I don't know if you saw what they did to Akron tonight, 60-plus points, I believe they hung on the Zips, was fully operational up there against Akron. Oklahoma will open conference play in a couple weeks against Auburn. So we get the Jackson Arnold Bowl coming down the pipe. Would love to know what you guys thought about the Oklahoma win, the Michigan loss, what your hot take is. Definitely let us know in the comments section. Write us a DM at 3TechPod on all of our social handles. Let's go to the CyHawk game, guys. And Trey, again, another one that I'm just going to pitch to you. I'm gonna kind of get in the mental state to prepare my statement. I will let you handle the cherry picked late game field goal situation that you lined out on the Wednesday preview show.
We don't get to do this very often on our previews, but sometimes things play out exactly like we tell you they're going to play out. And this is exactly how we told you the CyHawk game was going to play out. And to be fair, if you've watched any CyHawk game over like the last 7 years, you could have made the same analysis. So I'm not really trying to toot our own horn too much here, but yeah, it was a low scoring defensive slugfest throughout most of the game. Points were at a premium. And then a kicker from one of the two schools made a 50-plus yard field goal to basically walk it off and win. Like that's been the story for quite some time in this rivalry. So yeah, Iowa State was on the right side of this one. Credit to the Iowa State defense. I was a little worried about them stopping the run in this one. They did that in spades. They made Iowa one-dimensional. That was really helpful in that. You're going to talk a little bit more, I feel like, Mitch, about maybe another reason why they were one-dimensional, but this is a big win for Iowa State. I mentioned in my article this morning, this was just the second time since 2006 that they were favored in the CyHawk game. This is not a spot that they are typically finding themselves in this rivalry. It's typically, if they win, it's considered an upset if they knock off the Hawkeyes. But first win at home since 2011, big momentum builder. It really doesn't matter what the final score is in this one. It's going to be a low-scoring game every single year. That's just how this game plays out, and it's not going to affect Iowa State's offense the rest of the year in Big 12 play. We see that year over year that they're still able to be explosive in conference play. So massive start to the season here to get to 3-0, wins over your two biggest rivals 3 weeks into the season. There's not a fan base in the country feeling better than Iowa State right now.
No, there's not. There's probably not a fan base in the country feeling worse than the Kansas State Wildcats. We'll talk about them a little bit later in the show. As an
honorary member, I can attest to that.
Yep. No,
we're feeling
no
pretty
doubt.
bad over here.
Garrett, your thoughts on the CyHawk game?
I mean, for me, this entire thing was about the Cyclones' defense. I know that massive question mark coming into the year was being able to stop the run. You can check that one off because in your two big games, you've been really good against the run, really good against that in that spot. And so I was really proud of that effort. Also, they did a really good job. Again, only 3 down. There were a lot of moments where there were like 5 guys in the box and they were still stuffing the run and rallying to the ball. So, there's some real physicality. There was some real, kind of grit and toughness getting played with. And that's definitely something you want to see. And this is another one of those, I just said like some of the numbers are going to lie. I don't think anyone's really going to be convinced of it after this game, but I think Iowa State's a really, really good football team this year. And again, you're not going to prove that with a 3-point win in an ugly game, right? You're not going to prove it a couple weeks ago with a 3-point win in a game that was kind of okay, and your quarterback has somewhat pedestrian numbers, right? Like Rocco Becht isn't going to be making any, headlines throwing for 134 yards, right? That's not going to be something that's going to light up your notifications. But I still just think they're a really good team. They're clutch. They play well together, and they really don't, they don't really struggle to come up with that last play, right? Like that kick was huge. That kick was clutch. Obviously, kind of called it from the preview. Nice spot, Trey. But I think that's a really good football team that we watched. And Iowa really cannot figure out the offensive side of I'll let you kind of take that, but Iowa cannot figure out how to play offense. I don't know what football god they pissed off that brought this curse upon them, but they just cannot figure out how to play offense in the modern century. I don't know what it is.
It's not been fun to watch. Vandy Chris in our chat has Iowa going 4-8 this year. He's not sold on the offense, maybe any part of them. They don't have a wide receiver, he says. It scares anyone. And after today, it's really hard to disagree with that. So I did have to put out a notice on Twitter that I would address the results of today's game. So fellas, if you will allow me a moment, I have prepared a little speech here for the Jimmies and the Joes, and it goes something like this. My fellow Americans, I come to you this evening a broken and humbled man. Word of Iowa's pathetic offense has once again reached HQ. I would like you to know that I'm fully aware that I've been scammed. I've been betrayed by my sources, my research, and most importantly, my desire to see the best in Iowa football. It's clear that QB1 at Iowa is vacant. It does not exist. And the so-called improvements were nothing more than off-season hopium. I sincerely apologize for passing that on to the Jimmies and the Joes. Each week, you trust us by bringing us into your homes, your vehicles, your workplaces, and expect lighthearted as well as well-researched college football banter. And I promise that no one will work harder than I will the rest of the season. And you won't see anyone spend more time studying film than I will. And you won't see anyone be more devoted to this team than I will. God bless.
Mitch,
Wow.
that's very big of you. That was big to come on here and do that.
Thank you.
Good
Was that
for you.
Mitch Mason or was that Tim Tebow at the podium after losing to Mississippi State?
One in the same as some people have
If
said.
there was the same kind of if that kind of accountability existed in that Iowa offense, we'd have figured it out by now. But I don't know what it is. They just can't figure it out.
Guys, I don't know what to say. Truly, we knew that the wide receiver core was not going to be Alabama or Ohio State, right? I knew that, but coupled with the defense that Iowa has, I thought that they would figure it out. I mean, Gronowski was winning the FCS Heisman, which I know is a step down, but to win the FCS Heisman, to throw for like 10,000 yards in your career, guys, typically you would think that would mean that you're familiar with the concept of a forward pass, right? Like that follows. To complete that and to throw the ball down the field is how you get from point A to point B, being all kinds of records set at the FCS level. Gronowski looks like he doesn't know which hand he throws with on any given Saturday. It's been brutal. And quite frankly, the game looks way too fast for him. I don't know what the offseason was spent doing. He was playing against one of the best defenses in the country on an every down basis through the spring and through fall camp. And none of it looks like it's worn off at all. So, listen, I just gave a little speech and I meant every word of it. I truly have no idea what to make of Iowa, and it's very clear that Iowa to the playoff prediction that truly felt so genuine in my mind when I made it, that is nothing but pure fantasy at this point.
I think Garrett was right. I think it's just an Iowa voodoo at this point, because you go back and watch his South Dakota State highlights and it is not this person.
He looks amazing.
It's a different person.
Yeah.
It's a different person.
Look, sometimes it's just the coaching, it's the voice, it's the process of like, how do you get a play in? How are you being coached to read a defense? And it just slows the game down for a quarterback to a point where you can't play anymore. It just kind of gummies up the whole thing. Like we've seen coaches that have taken a quarterback and, either he was really good and now he doesn't look very good, or he takes a quarterback who, we all think is kind of bad. Then he leaves and now all of a sudden he looks like a genius. Like this happens frequently. I don't know what to make of the situation at Iowa though. Like, I don't know what the process is. They've like had different coaches. They just cannot figure it out. Like it's, and I almost start to wonder back, like at moments in the past when they've had success on the offensive side of the ball, was it just like generational talent at the tight end position, or like was it just the fact that they just had like too big of a body to miss at that spot? Like I don't know, but they got to figure it out. Like they have to figure out how to play defense or how to play offense, and because their defense is so freaking good, they play really good defense. If they could ever put together even just like a 70th or 60th offense in the country, I feel like you're like 10-2 locked, no problem. But I'm done trying to make sense of it for Iowa. It just doesn't make sense. And I think until they show me something, they deserve I'm not going to try to analyze this. I'm going to write them off. Like, go put up 40 somewhere, and then I'll start thinking about you again.
Might be a lot of a safer space to do that for sure. And I think it's something that I'm going to have to internalize. I think we're going to have to, go for a long walk here this next week and just process the disaster that was El Clasico. Let's get to the final game in the Big Three that ended up being the final score. Looks like it was an absolute blowout. I think this game was much more competitive than what the final score indicates. But Illinois wins 45-19 over Duke. Illinois, on one hand, looks like they've established themselves as a true playoff contender. On the other hand, it feels like a massive failure in a big moment, in a big test for the Duke Blue Devils. But Trey's, you and I were kind of watching this at the game. it felt like this had a chance to be a lot closer all the way through. In fact, Duke kind of felt like the better team early on in this game, but 5 turnovers for the Blue Devils, including 4 fumbles, all of them lost, ultimately sink the Blue Devils ship. It just kind of feels like a wasted opportunity where you get 1 or 2 of those maybe to bounce back into the friendly hands of your roster, and maybe it's a different ball game, but Illinois also played really, really solidly on offense.
Yeah, Illinois don't want to take anything away from them, and I'll start with the winner because their offense looked the part of a playoff contender today. We were worried going in. We were worried that this was going to be an overlook game, that this is going to be a trap game. We got a big one with Indiana coming up in a couple weeks. Like, this was not the game that most had circled on the Illinois schedule this year.
Mm-hmm.
But they came out ready to go from the word go, and they figured out a way to move the ball against a really good Duke defense. They were better offenses than I expected Illinois to be this year that had trouble moving the ball against Duke's defense last year. So, yeah, I mean, this was a tight one in the first half. The turnovers really started catching up with Duke in the second half. Credit to the Illinois defenders for being there and ready to make those plays and fall on those balls when they needed to. But yeah, I mean, it's a big missed opportunity for Duke. We kind of circled this one as a chance for Duke to show that they were maybe the better dark horse candidate to make the playoff out of their conference. But hey, I mean, Illinois, like I said, looked the part today, and I got to eat a little crow for that. I was not ready for Illinois to come out and really make a statement like that today.
Yeah, 22-31 for 296 yards, 3 touchdowns for Luke Altmaier. His quarterback progression has really been fun to watch. I mean, early on in his career at Ole Miss, it was all potential. He goes to Illinois, he throws a bunch of interceptions. Last year took that step to really negate some of those turnovers, cut down on that number. And this year, it seems like he's got the potential to, with new wide receivers and not the stars that we got used to last year, but as a quarterback, dissect a defense, and a very good defense too. Because Garrett, Duke's defense early, especially in the first half, they were tearing up Illinois' offensive line. 7 tackles for loss in the first 2 drives. It took almost until halftime for Illinois to even get in the positives when it came to rushing yards. But with all of that, and Vincent Anthony having 3 sacks in the first drive of the second quarter, Altmaier was able to stand in there, command the offense, move them down the field, and take advantage of those mistakes to put up 45 on a team that I think was going to have probably a top 30, 35 defense when it is all said and done.
Yeah, this was the game that I had to go back and rewrite the most of my notes from, because a lot of my first half notes were, okay, never mind, they figured it out. It was truly something else where, for a lot of this, it looked like Duke was miles better than Illinois. They came out super flat. They didn't know how to do anything on the offensive side, and then Duke would get an opportunity and then just bounce the ball off their dang chest and then give it right back. And that punt that got muffed was really the first place where I was like, oh, Duke, what are we doing? Like, it was just like a head scratcher, right? Face palm type of moment. But it just kept going from there. It was like, okay, well, you give them a, super short field. Of course, they're going to punch it in. All right, but that's okay. You've been shutting them down all day. Then I had to scrap all that because, what was the better team in the first half, even though they continuously were shooting themselves in the foot, and that did not stop in the second half, quickly turned into the worst team based on whatever halftime adjustments were made. So massive credit to the coaching staff, because whatever they saw and adjusted to and whatever those players did to fix it clearly worked. They jumped out all over him. This was one of those that was in the quad box and kind of got away from me because the rest of the games in my quad box were real entertaining. And I was like, oh, well, that game's ugly. I'll see it towards the end. Just, let me know when Duke fumbles again. But at a certain point, I kind of looked up. I'm like, oh shoot, Illinois jumped out big on this one, and this was kind of a huge game for them. I think to prove some people wrong. Definitely a good game for them to kind of establish that offense in the second half. But this is one of those where, yeah, like if you were just watching the box score, definitely got fooled, because this was in no means a blowout. This was just a pulled away with it, and yeah, man, Duke just could not get out of their own way. It reminded me of there's that, I think it's Family Guy. They have the scene that's the cutaway where there's a farmer just stepping on rakes in a field and he can't get out of the field of rakes. That's what it felt like for Duke. They just couldn't stop finding the rake and watching it come up and thwack him in the head.
I thought Darren Mensah looked good. Again, at one point, I believe he had completed 22 straight passes going back to the second half of week one. Yeah, he's not going to be the problem for Duke. It's clean up the turnovers, and I think the Blue Devils are a dangerous team once again. For Illinois, because it does feel like that was a major stepping stone in a playoff candidacy that they've announced for themselves this year. They've got Western Michigan next week, and then they open up conference play, Trey, like you mentioned, at Indiana. They play USC. They go to Purdue. They host Ohio State in the Illinois game, which will be a ton of fun, right before a bye week. They go to Washington, host Rutgers. They play Maryland, at Wisconsin, and finish up at Northwestern. Sure, Indiana, USC, Ohio State, Washington are potentially scary teams, and you could make a case that they lose to any or all of those contests. But if Illinois is able to continue to prove themselves to be as physical as what we've seen them be, if Altmaier can keep that offense moving and be as accurate, and he had some zip on those throws today. If all of those constants remain, which is a huge if, where do you see Illinois ultimately ending up by the end of this season?
They're going to be right there in that discussion for the last Big 10 team to get into the playoff if they can keep playing like they did today. Now, they've got a lot to clean up. They've got a lot on the offensive line to clean up. The running game didn't look great consistently today against a Duke team that's playing with a lot of heart, but they are better and more physically disadvantaged than going up against Illinois. So I'm worried about Illinois' offensive line going up against some better defensive fronts in the Big Ten. We saw Duke really throw a wrench in what they wanted to do on the ground today, and it's not going to get any easier once Big Ten play starts. So that's something they really got to clean up. But you got a coach that can figure that out and has definitely done a great job over the course of his career figuring that out as the season goes along. So my stock is way up on Illinois. This was a big statement win for the Illini today. I was personally out on them going into the season. I didn't really want to buy into the hype that everybody else was kind of putting out into the ethosphere in the preseason. But man, it's hard to not buy in after what we saw today. It's going to be another big one in a couple weeks against Indiana, another chance to prove themselves. But they looked the part today.
It certainly did. And boy, conference play, I'm glad it starts in week 4 for a lot of these teams. We get those couple early data points, and then it's truly good on good, which I'm excited to see. So those are our big 3. Like I said, we wanted to get through the Illinois Duke game because I think the storylines are where we're going to spend the majority of the rest of the show. And fellas, we got to go down to the swamp to start here tonight. USF stuns Florida 18-16, their first ever win over Florida. They were 0-3 previously. They have now beaten Boise State. They have beaten Florida in the swamp. And next week, guys, they go to Miami to take on the Hurricanes. I'm beyond impressed with South Florida. And Trey, when we previewed this game, I took them plus the 17.5. You made the case that, hey, Florida's probably going to lean on them. The ground game is going to be too much. And I said, you know what? That's probably the case. But I like where the program is headed. I like what Alex Golesh has got going on. And I just kind of believe in this revamped roster. And not only did that revamped roster believe in themselves today and step up in a big moment, Trey, at times they looked more physical. They looked better coached. They looked more disciplined, certainly, than what we saw from the Florida Gators. And so on one hand, I couldn't be more impressed with what I saw from the Bulls. On the other hand, I feel completely duped, just the same that I did with Iowa. We talked ourselves into Billy Napier maybe figuring this thing out in the back half of 2024. And here we are again, losing a game due to stupid penalties, countless penalties, called 3 touchdowns back. You have the spitting penalty at the end that just gift wraps USF a first down and gets them out of the shadow of their own goalpost. I mean, it was a total comedy of errors for Florida, and USF was perfectly fine to accept those.
Yeah, well said. USF was ready to take advantage of all those errors that Florida kept just shooting themselves in the foot. But yeah, first starting with USF, they once again looked like a Power Four team wearing a G5 team's uniform. They have some dudes on that defensive line. They were giving Florida problems all game long, and you got to credit that coaching staff for keeping them locked into that game. It looked like Florida had finally found something at the beginning of the second half, right? They kind of righted the ship. They were winning at halftime, and it looked like Florida was kind of going to try to take control there. When Florida went up with that touchdown, I think it was 16 to 15 at
15.
that point. Yeah, 16-15. They go up by one, and you're thinking, okay, Florida's going to kind of ice this out. It's going to be a big bullet dodge, but they're going to get this done. But USF never blinked. They weathered the storm for the rest of that game. They got their final opportunity. They missed a field goal. I can't remember if that was going to be to retake the lead or not, but didn't blink then either and got their opportunity once again and made the most of it. But jumping back over to Florida, man, we had the conversation on this show almost a year to the day ago about when Billy Napier was going to get fired. And we just kept waiting after they got embarrassed by Texas A&M at home in week 3 last year. And now we're right here again a year later. And yes, he had the big comeback. Yes, he had the big resurgence last year. But once again, there was another coach that came into your house and just coached circles around your guy. What was he doing at the end of the game with his timeouts?
I don't know.
Like what was the strategy there?
There wasn't a strategy.
There wasn't. He was just guessing on when to call the timeouts. He let USF bleed the clock all the way down and left himself with literally no time and no timeouts. It's just unfathomably dumb how that played out, just to put it bluntly. And it's just clear to see that Florida is not going to have a coaching advantage as long as Napier's on the sideline. They're going to have dudes. They're going to have talented guys that can pull off upsets and that can win big games, but they're never going to have a coaching advantage with Billy Napier on the sideline.
Which is hilarious because Napier has like the largest assistant pool in the country. Their polo photo again went viral this year for however many staffers that they end up having. It's like as many players, scholarship players, as are on the roster. I mean, Garrett, you were watching this game as well. I think Trey's point of South Florida not blinking at all is apt because as many times as Florida had a chance to just step on their throat, nice try, little brother, not today, they failed to do so.
Yeah, and I thought, especially the way that second to last drive finished out for them, where they're right on that field goal line on the field, right, like right next to it, and then they kind of get up close, then they take a little tackle for a loss. They're just kind of flirting with the line. I kind of felt like that wasn't necessarily the play they needed to make. I felt like they kind of needed to maybe push it, be a little bit more aggressive, but it seemed like they were playing for the field goal. And as soon as Grammatica's kick came, agonizingly short. It was right there. I sat up and I was like, all right, well, that was fun. It was a good attempt. Honestly, the program's still going in a good direction, all of that. And then inexplicably, Florida doesn't handle their business. They can't figure out a way to get a first down, and we're right back, right? And when they came back down and they set that up, and then now it's a short, field goal attempt, I just sat there thinking, man, like, forget about the playoff implications, forget about they're a good G5 team and the schedule and the whatever, like, forget about all that. Just think about what the program is right now, right? Like you're walking into, University of Florida, right? Big, state school, the one with the name, and you're walking into the swamp and it's hallowed ground and everything else. And you walked in there and you beat them. And this is a big moment for that program, for everything that you were selling to your team, selling to your players about how we're going to build this thing, we're going to play tough, all that. You finally earned it. Like, and this is a big, big moment. So I want to give them their flowers because, like, this is huge for them as a program, right? It doesn't matter if they, rest of the year it kind of falls apart a little bit, or, they don't quite get up over the hump and they don't quite grab that playoff spot. Like, this is the year they beat Florida and they got it done. And so that's huge for them. For the other side of it, man, I think Billy's done. Like, I think this has got to be it, right? This is, there's no other excuse for it. Look, Trey, you mentioned it, but last year after the A&M game, the fan base had him like dead in the water. Like they wanted him out. I jumped into the comment section and into a live stream on a Florida fan page just to kind of get the general vibe of the fan base, and everyone is just like, well, maybe Lane Kiffin, okay, well maybe and they were already on to thinking about their next coach. Nobody wanted him, and then he pulls DJ Lagway out of his pocket, and all of a sudden he pulls a couple of upsets. I think it's going to take more than just a couple of upsets at this point for Billy to save his job. Like even the fact that we're still considering these, like you're still having to go in and make an upset. He's been in the program as long as we've been doing the podcast, and we're still thinking of them as you're going to have to upset like 6 to 8 teams to pull out a successful season. Florida shouldn't be in that spot. Florida has the resources. Florida has the brand. Florida has all that. They shouldn't be thinking about all the games in their schedule as upsets in order to make their season happen. So, frankly, I think the experiment is a failure. I think that he's failed to build his program. And at this point, I mean, when you hear Fire Billy echoing in the concourse, I don't know if y'all saw that clip. When that's happening, it's over, man. I don't know what to tell you. This is it. He may not be fired tomorrow, but he won't be the coach of Florida for very long.
Typically, when that happens throughout the course of one season, you don't necessarily get a do-over, right? You don't get the second attempt at it. But guys, I wanted again to play how many wins here. Obviously, 2 games in, they're 1-1, and I saw I think it was a Rivals on 3, whatever the mega conglomerate put out an article saying, this is a disappointing loss, but Florida will bounce back. And guys, I thought about that and went, well, without having to pay to get behind the paywall to see how Florida will bounce back, let's just go look at their schedule, shall we? So their schedule as a 1-1 team is as follows. They are at LSU. They are at Miami. They get a bye week. They host the Texas Longhorns. They go to Kyle Field to take on our Texas A&M Aggies. They host Mississippi State Bulldogs, who just knocked off Arizona State. We'll talk about them in a minute. They play Georgia. They're technically the home team in that game. They will go to Kentucky that just gave Ole Miss all they could handle. They will go to Ole Miss to take on a Rebels team that has been known to put up some points a time or two. They host Tennessee, and then they will host Florida State, who just put up 70+ against East Texas A&M. My fellow Americans, where on earth does Florida bounce back in this schedule? Like, where is the momentum?
How many locks are there?
Maybe Kentucky. I would lock Kentucky, and that's just me maybe riding the high of Mississippi State right now, which, like, I grant, like, Mississippi State probably still not a very good football team, but, like, they just did that, so I'm going to ride the high for a minute. Yeah, dude, come on. This is it's going to take serious upsets for this to turn into a bowl game type team. Like this is not going to be a very good team. They're going to lose a lot of games down the stretch.
Well, and it's not just the opponents on their schedule, it's the road games that they've got to go, right? Like a lot of their magic, I know they took down was it LSU they beat in the Swamp. Who'd they beat last year on the road?
Was it Ole Miss?
Ole Miss.
They beat Ole Miss on the road. But this year they've got to go to LSU. They've got to go to Miami. They've got to go to Texas.
Oh, no, Ole Miss was a home game. Who did they beat on the? I don't remember who they beat on the road. They played Ole Miss.
I don't think they won any. I don't think they
did. They not win any road games. Okay, then that may be proving my point. They've got to go to. They've got to go to Kroger Field for again, like what you're trying to pick out the locks. Like Kentucky at home, I think absolutely a lock. Kentucky on the road, I don't know.
That's not nothing.
Maybe Calzado
especially
wins.
where it falls on the schedule too, because it could be after.
It's right after Georgia, right before Ole Miss, possible trap.
Which, and I'm not selling Florida off and saying they're gonna go 3-9, the rest of the way and miss a bowl game and everything's doom and gloom, because we did that a little bit last year and then they proved us all wrong. So I'm not gonna take the bait there, but I will say that to be in this spot for the third straight season where you've had early disappointment and it's very clear that you're not going to reach more than likely the ceiling that the talent says you should be able to reach. To me, for a program like Florida, like that says all you need to know. This is not your guy, and it's going to be time to move on.
Yeah, the only point kind of against that Mitch, would be that, like, yeah, you might be able to make some kind of an argument for that, but the problem is this year he doesn't have a 5-star phenom quarterback in his back pocket with no, experience that anyone can put on tape, right? Like that's not something he has available to him. So I
Yeah.
just I don't know, man. I don't know if there's another game you can consider a lock, but he needs to win. I would assume in the next 3 weeks, he needs to win at least one game to keep his fan base off his back. And again, at LSU, at Miami, and Texas, that's not the way to do it.
Kalen
LSU.
DeBoer needs to send Billy Napier like a Tiff Streets box or something. Like
An edible arrangements or something.
yeah, something to just say thank you for getting the heat off of me for a little bit.
Well, and I'll say this, like LSU didn't exactly look immortal against Louisiana Tech tonight. I think they pulled away
They
at
did
the
not.
I think they pulled away at the end, but it was what 10-0 like midway through the third quarter. I mean,
They didn't score a lot of points for a long time.
yeah. I don't even know what that final score ended up being. The most I saw it at was 20-0, and I mean, even still, like, guys, we're not a full 3 scores ahead of Louisiana Tech. That's concerning. So anyway, that will be fascinating to preview for next week. Cannot wait to get there. Let's keep moving down along the Saturday storylines, and let's go to the border war. Let's talk about a comeback for the Missouri Tigers. They were down at one point 21-6. Trey, we didn't know if our ESPN app was being correct because on one hand it was showing 14-0. For me, it was showing 6-0 in favor of Missouri. The scores were all over the place, but Kansas jumps right on Missouri early. They go up on the road, easy to take the energy, the vibe out of that place, and then Missouri kind of digs deep, and they go on a big-time scoring run. Bo Prabula has himself a day. Defense finally did wear down Kansas in the end. By the time that you got midway through the third quarter, into that fourth quarter, like I kind of leaned on in that preview, I felt like Missouri's defense, the speed, the depth, was going to be able to outlast Kansas. And by the end of that game, Jalen Daniels couldn't really affect the game with his feet, and the wide receivers were not getting open. For me, yes, it was a rough start to the game, but it's a rivalry game. Things happen. I came away more impressed with Missouri than when I was coming into this game, and I'm still on the bandwagon that the Tigers are a legitimate contender in the SEC.
I'm right there with you, and we were really high on their defense going into the year. This offense looks really scary. Bo Prabula, 30 of 39 for 334 and 3. They had two running backs go over 100 yards, combined for 265. Kevin Coleman leading that receiving corps coming up from Mississippi State. This is a scary offense. There's a lot of fun pieces on there. Bo Prabula is slinging it around. But yeah, to go back to the defense real quick, they really did a good job the entire game of making Jalen Daniels one-dimensional. He had 10 carries for just 17 yards. 19 of those yards came on one run towards the end of the game. So they were keeping him contained. They were getting him behind the line of scrimmage multiple times, and that was a big key. They didn't let him take over the game with his feet, and that's something he can do to even really, really good defenses. We've seen him do that in his career. So a good showing from Kansas. I think this is not. I'm not any lower on Kansas than I was going into this game. I think that they are a dark horse contender in the Big 12. Their win over Fresno State has aged very well, as we've seen Fresno State come out and win their next 2 games, including beating Oregon State on the road today. So that's a win that's aged well. They looked really good playing defense their first couple of games. Ran into a little bit of a buzzsaw today, but these are 2 teams that are going to be dark horses and have a lot to say about their respective conferences this year.
I think that might be a really bad Oregon State team up in Corvallis.
It might.
Go watch some of the lowlights from the first half of that game. But you're right. Certainly, it feels like Kansas is on the right track. And Garrett, we talked about in the preview show, we're very high on Kansas, probably overachieving from our preseason expectations. Their schedule looks pretty friendly here in the next couple of weeks, especially given what's happened at West Virginia, losing to Ohio, Kansas State falling apart. Their next couple of games, and Garrett, tell me where you think they take their season based off of this. West Virginia, Cincinnati, at UCF. They'll go to Texas Tech. They get a bye week. They'll play Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Arizona, another bye week at Iowa State. versus Utah. I mean, the path to 8-9 wins, I don't have to politic all that hard to get Kansas to 9-3.
No, 9-3 looks super doable on the schedule, and they're going to be able to build up some momentum over the next couple games. I mean, West Virginia, not a good football team. Bummer, but I guess it is what it is. Cincinnati, UCF, they should be able to rattle off a couple of wins, put up some points, which, like, again, they didn't necessarily even look all that good. They got outgained in this by, like, what, 300 or 400 yards? It was 595 to 226.
Yeah.
So, like, they weren't even really moving the ball that well. It just, they found ways to put points on the boards. I think it'll look better. Obviously, if they're finding ways to score against a better defense like Missouri, I think far worse defenses, they'll be able to go and put points up. It'll be about keeping up with teams like, Texas Tech or, I think, who was it later? I think Iowa State they play, but, that's going to be a much better defense, I think. So, it's just going to be about finding ways to keep putting up points and trying to keep up in some of those shootouts. I don't think the sky is falling if you're Kansas. Obviously, this one stings, right? Losing a rivalry game always sucks, but nothing really to get too upset about. When, again, like Missouri, they look pretty good. I mean, it's a pretty good-looking Missouri Tigers team up there. I think that's one that a lot of people probably didn't pay attention to in their offseason, and now a lot of teams are looking at that game on their schedule, and maybe they're thinking about Missouri the way they were previously thinking about a team like Florida, right? Where they're saying, that's going to be a tough one. Make sure you show up for that one.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a good Missouri team, and I think Kansas hanging with them shows that they're going to be a just fine team in the Big 12.
Yeah, everybody's
going to host South Carolina in 2 weeks.
That's going to be great.
That's going to be a
fun one.
Yeah, well, that'll be must-watch TV. Although South Carolina, little bit of a slow start offensively these last 2 weeks. I think they eventually started to put it on SC Upstate, but certainly didn't blow the Hokies away, a team that Vandy showed you could put a lot of points on no matter where you're playing them. Slow start to the game tonight, but we'll talk about that one certainly in a couple weeks' time. Trey, talk to me about Baylor and SMU. We were there covering that game. The Bears squeak out a 2-overtime victory, 48-45 to take down the 17th-ranked Mustangs of SMU. It's been what? I don't know, 8-9 hours, something like that, since that game concluded. And I'm still, quite frankly, not sure how Baylor won this one.
SMU had a 2-touchdown lead with about 5 minutes to go in regulation, and the defense got soft. This was not a banner game for defensive football. If you liked defense, you were pulling your hair out watching these two teams try to cover each other. Offenses looked fantastic. We saw both teams just basically get whatever they wanted through the air and on the ground throughout most of this game. Both quarterbacks played really, really well. But yeah, this was one that Baylor really stole from SMU. SMU had a 2-touchdown lead late in the fourth quarter. Baylor marches right down the field, scores, gets a stop, scores again with about 30 seconds left. SMU had an opportunity to get maybe a little closer for a field goal. I really didn't love how they called that final drive at the end of regulation. They kind of settled for, what was it, a 54, 55-yard field goal attempt that came up short. And man, we just, both you and I, like, credit to Baylor for finding a way in this one. But throughout this game, both of us were just like, what is Baylor doing? There were multiple times throughout the game. Case in point, on that last field goal, they didn't even put a guy back to try to catch the potential short field goal. Like, they didn't bother to do that. That just wasn't something that they wanted to do. They'd rather have 2 or 3 guys stand 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage and do nothing. But they weathered the storm. They brought a nice contingent of fans up I-35 from Waco, and they were very loud and very boisterous. It was a great atmosphere at Ford Stadium, sellout crowd. That was one of the best crowds I've ever seen at that stadium, and just a fantastic college football game. I don't know how SMU blew that one, but it was a fantastic finish to a great college football game.
Yeah, we're walking away from that stadium. I think we were trying to digest what we had just seen, and you almost forgot that we just kind of witnessed an instant classic just because of how quickly it got away from SMU. I'll say a couple of things here. On the positive side, for both teams, you shout out the quarterbacks. Specifically, I have to shout out Sawyer Robertson. 34-50, 440 yards, and 4 touchdowns. I mean, this season is going to be on the right arm of Sawyer Robertson. I thought Baylor's offense, I gave them in our show notes, I gave them an A. The offense started a little sluggish, but boy, they figured it out, and they matriculated that ball at will in the second half of that football game. The defense just didn't bother to submit the assignment. And that's what's most concerning to me. Like, if you're a Baylor fan tuning into this clip on YouTube, or if you're listening to the podcast for the first time, hopefully we're finding some common ground here. I don't think I'm saying anything you won't agree with. Certainly,
judging by who we interacted with at the game,
I was going to say, based on the conversation we had going on around us, I'm not in the minority here. The defense is dreadful. And that's really concerning because Dave Aranda is a defensive guy. That was why he came to Waco in the first place, was to fix the defense. Baylor has historically had some amazing offenses, and they haven't been able to stop the common cold. So Aranda came in from LSU after winning a national championship, and suddenly everything is saved. We're going to be fine in Waco. We're going to play defense and help define the new era of the Big 12. And that's just not been the case. They're undisciplined. I thought they were slow in the secondary, and SMU exploited that numerous times. And quite frankly, it just felt like they were not ever on the same page. Now, the pass rush started to get home. The run defense certainly improved in the second half, and it felt like they got a little bit stronger as the game went on, whereas I thought SMU's defense just ran out of gas. I felt like the secondary got left on too many islands. SMU's pass rush stopped getting home, and ultimately I think that's what allowed the Bears to come back and win this game. But if I'm Baylor and I'm going, okay, we are 1-1, thank heavens we're not 0-2, you are excited about what the offense can do. And against a tough schedule that maybe is a little less tough with the losses of Arizona State, and they have Kansas State on the schedule too. Is that right?
Yes, they host. I can't remember if it's home or away. But
yeah. They go to Kansas State, right? So a couple of those tough top opponents, maybe not going to be the juggernauts that we thought they were going to be. So if the schedule gets a little bit easier, great. A team like Baylor could step up and benefit from that. But you're going to have to figure it the heck out on defense, because you cannot continue to win games 48-45 all throughout the season and feel like you're going to be contending for a Big 12 championship. The conference is not the Big 12 conference of, the 2010s where, yeah, sure, we're all putting up 50 points and it's the last team that has the ball wins. There are some legitimate defenses in this conference right now. Neither of them appear to reside in, Manhattan or Stillwater, but we still got some legitimate defenses in this conference. And I just don't think that's the recipe for success long term. And so, as my personal stock report of Baylor, I actually came away disappointed in what I saw from Baylor, more so than what I was excited about on the offensive side.
Weird to kind of go at it from that angle when it's 440 yards, right? Like, it's weird to say that, saying, yeah, the offense had me excited but not as down as the defense, when Sawyer Robertson's out here throwing for like 1.5 miles on SMU. And it is weird to say, because again, that is the problem at Baylor right now, and that's a big reason why they lost against Auburn, was because they refused to do anything but just run too high. They wanted to run too high and say that, Cam Coleman and Eric Singleton ain't going to beat me. I'm like, great. Well, you're going to watch a quarterback who we didn't realize could run all over you the entire game. And so, like, again, if you can fix the defensive side of it, which, again, baffling that Aranda can't do this. If you can fix the defense side, you have, and, in my opinion, at least, best quarterback in the Big 12, probably one of the top quarterbacks in the whole country, who showed you today that, like, again, asked the question, not really sure how Baylor won this game. The way that Baylor won this game was they just never quit, right? It really just came down to, you have an experienced quarterback who's extremely talented, who didn't let you get out of the game. And he kept coming back with his counterpunch every single time. And a little bit of props to what Baylor was able to do, stifling Kevin Jennings in the second half. Just the second half. The first half was immaculate. He goes 10 for 10, 236, 2 touchdowns. Yep. Like, insane stuff in the first half. Finishes, 295? Is that the number there? Like, that's not a whole lot of yards in that second half. And so, like, again, it wasn't like you stopped, SMU's offense. But they did a couple things right, made a couple of adjustments. You got a lot to fix on the defensive side if you're Baylor. You got so much that you need to figure out how to, not just isolate a quarterback if he's the guy beating you. You got to stop the run, got to tackle, got to catch up with guys in the back end. Like there's a lot to fix for the Baylor Bears. But I think if your quarterback is Sawyer Robertson, you're willing to kind of float that for part of the season and say, okay, well, he'll keep us in some games. But I think if this is the ride that Baylor's taking this year, it's going to be a cardiac special for the entire season, because there's going to be a whole lot of 48-45, 51-50 games like that. It's not the way that I think Bears fans want to live.
On the other side, I think SMU was extremely close to walking out of there with maybe a 2 or 3 touchdown victory.
No kidding.
I think it was the third quarter when SMU was driving with the football. Nothing Baylor was doing could stop them, but then Kevin Jennings gets tripped by a ref.
Yeah.
Tripped by the
That
center
was
judge.
pretty hilarious on the TV side of it, at least. The announcers had some things to say about that.
I mean, I don't know what that guy was thinking, but he just gets right in the middle of the play, trips Kevin Jennings up, and it's just a comedy of errors from that point. I think he fumbled, picked it up, threw an incomplete pass, or completed the pass and lost 9 yards or something to that effect.
Yeah,
but
fell apart.
Before that play, Baylor could not stop SMU. SMU was going to score another touchdown on that drive if they didn't get that gift from the officiating crew. And I don't know if you're encouraged by that if you're an SMU fan. I don't know if that's just extremely painful and you're looking at this one as one that got away. But I will say, loved what I saw on the offensive side of the ball from SMU. I loved the scheme and how they continued to attack the Baylor defense, took what they were given. Didn't love the strategy at the end of the game, but there is still a lot of opportunity in the ACC. There's a lot of winnable games on that conference schedule, and you lost a game to a Big 12 team last year and still made it to Charlotte.
It's true. That is certainly true. That Big 12 team, BYU, turned out to be pretty good. Maybe Baylor will get the defense figured out. They'll be right there in the end as well.
They're going to ban us from the stadium if SMU's playing Big 12 teams.
Or maybe just you, because I've been there when they've won. So maybe it's just you that's the problem.
Maybe
the court of public opinion can adjudicate there, but I have seen SMU wins from our seats, so I'll just throw that.
I've seen wins, just not against Big 12 teams.
Well, I think
fair. I'm just banned against Big 12 teams.
Guys, let's talk Mississippi State getting a signature win over Arizona State, 24-20. Jeff Lebby really gets the first win of note from his time in Starkville, and it was a fun game. Arizona State really kind of fell flat early. Mississippi State jumps all over them. Quick touchdown right out of the gate. Garrett, you were hopping in our group chat like, yo, that started fast for Hail State. And while Mississippi State's offense eventually kind of got slowed down and Sam Leavitt figured it out a little bit, it was some of that SEC physicality that it felt like really kind of gave Kenny Dillingham all that he wanted from a play calling standpoint. Sam Leavitt never looked comfortable. He was throwing the ball all over the lot. The wide receivers were having a hard time getting open. And Hail State Nation came to play. The bells were loud. The blackout jersey looked amazing. It was just kind of the perfect recipe for an upset, and that's exactly what we got.
When you said SEC physicality, I heard every single fan of any non-SEC team roll their eyes in unison at the idea that Mississippi State's. But you're right.
But
you are correct.
Yeah,
you are 100% correct. It's going to piss everyone off. But you should not say it for that reason.
It doesn't mean it's not true. Yeah.
No, they came out of the gate with their hair on fire, man. That was just all vibes. It was pure vibes. And the reason you know that is because they scored 17 in the first half and then just forgot how to play football for a lot of that second half. I love this for Mississippi State. They deserve this more than maybe any other fan base anywhere else. I think we even talked about it in the previews where we were saying Mississippi State, they need to figure out a way to get it together. Their fans are awesome. Starkville's always great. They show up. They'll find it at some point in time, but it's just not going to be this year. And it still might not be this year, right? We're kind of still riding a little bit of the high. That game didn't wrap up too long ago. So I understand that, for some of it, it just might be vibes right now, but good for them, right? Just awesome night for them. Shapen looked really good. A couple of absolute dimes in that game from him. And on the other side, Sam Leavitt really was pretty flat. they kind of started to figure stuff out towards the end, but it was too little too late. And, it's probably one of those where if you play another 10 minutes, they find a way to win. But football's only 60 minutes long, so they just couldn't pull it out. But yeah, hats off to Mississippi State on this one. Love this for them. And if they go 2-10 this year, this will still be a bright spot.
I think, Trey, the first half is what Mississippi State wants to hang their hat on, right? Because 17-3 was the halftime score. The Sun Devils were outgained 209-95. We didn't even get to 100 yards for the Sun Devils. In the second half, though, that SEC physicality is where it started to maybe wane, because Arizona State ends the game with 251 yards rushing, the vast majority of which came in the second half. You had Raleek Brown go off for 110. Kanye Udo had 105. That running game almost got Arizona State right back, or it did get Arizona State right back into this. They took the lead, and Mississippi State rides a last-second touchdown to the victory. Very similar to what we were talking about with Baylor not quitting. I think you got to give a tip of the cap to Mississippi State for not rolling their eyes and going, here we go again. We've been in this place countless times before, and this is just more of the same.
Yeah, absolutely. That's well said, because Arizona State was getting whatever they wanted on the ground in the second half. I think before the last possession, where it was kind of a desperation, try to get back into scoring another go-ahead touchdown, I think they had attempted 6 passes or something like that in the second half. Wow. It was all run game, and it was working.
Yeah.
But then they got to the point where they just couldn't do that anymore because there wasn't enough time. So, yeah, credit Mississippi State for weathering that storm. Massive connection by Blake Shapen. Blake Shapen had a nice game, and I think people forget that he was injured in like week 3 or 4 last year, and this does feel like a different Mississippi State team with Blake Shapen running the show and having all the experience that he does. So we'll see. We'll see if it translates against SEC defenses. I think Arizona State probably still fine in the Big 12. I feel like I'm saying that about every Big 12 team that struggles out of conference. They'll probably still be fine in the Big 12 because we just throw them all in a blender anyways. But this wasn't exactly a dominant team during the regular season last year, and I'm talking about Arizona State. So
yeah, no, they weren't.
I'm not shocked by this result. This was a close game in Tempe last year before we really, as a college football universe, knew who Cam Scadaboo was and knew what that offense was capable of under Sam Leavitt. So I was expecting this one to be close. Love that Mississippi State got the win, but I'm not too concerned about Arizona State going forward. I think they'll figure it out.
Guys, I'm taking a peek ahead at the schedule for Mississippi State. They're playing Alcorn State and then Northern Illinois. They'll probably win both of those games, and then it's going to make Tennessee and A&M look really, really good after that. Oh. When Tennessee gets to say, "Hey, that's a 4-0 Mississippi State team we just beat. That's a pretty quality win." And then for like A&M, "Hey, it's a 4-1 Mississippi State team we just beat." And it's going to be games like that where they may not win a conference game. It's a tough conference schedule, but they're going to be 4-0 probably, and that's going to be a fun way to enter the season for Mississippi State.
If the Aggies had to go to Starkville, I would be pronouncing that as a loss tonight, based on what I just saw.
No chance.
Now, coming to College Station, hopefully the running game is different. That's personal. You will feel the anxiety coming through your screen, coming through your speakers when we get to that game week, because, my gosh, playing Mississippi State, even if we beat them by 40, it's never a comfortable lead up to that game, no matter how bad that team is.
And we were kind of giggling. They set that one as the blackout game for A&M, but we might need blackout and all the energy that brings just to get over the hump when it comes to a 4-1 Mississippi State team coming into town.
Yeah, might need some voodoo in the building for sure. Trey, back to the Big 12. Would you like to pronounce time of death on your Kansas State Wildcats, because they just lost to the Army Black Knights? First of all, salute the troops. But that was a home game that they really had no business losing after the Texans of Tarleton State beat Army last week.
Chris Kleiman's got to go. I held back. I held back after week 0, but dude's got to go. What are we doing? Well, you can't have lost. All the talent. They look lost. They look like they need a change in leadership. And I think Chris Kleiman is a I thought a great coach, maybe not even a good coach. I don't know what to think of him at this point because you can't take all the talent that he has and keep getting away with this. He has one of the most talented rosters in the Big 12. And he just can't keep getting away with this. That fan base deserves better than what they're getting on the field.
Uh, well said. Listen, I'll I have Iowa, you have Kansas State. I'm gonna let that be your personal battle to fight there. Ugly loss to Army. They could have put the Black Knights away before halftime. That could have been they could have been up 20 plus before half, and they kind of let Army stay in it. Army got a score right before the half, and then they just did nothing in the second half. They as listless as they looked in Ireland, they've looked even worse maybe since coming back home. They also almost lost to North Dakota. They do lose to Army. And guys, the Ireland curse, the Irish curse stays alive. The team that loses that game has not made a bowl game since returning stateside. I don't know if Kansas State's going to go to a bowl game, but right now they haven't given me any reason to believe that they belong in the postseason of any kind. So tough scene for the folks in the Little Apple.
They've had 2 gimme games, and they needed a last-second touchdown to beat one of them, and they lost to the other. So not going to a bowl game is definitely within the realm of possibility right now.
It's not look great. 2 really rope-a-dope performances that I have on our run sheet as well. Dabo and the Clemson offense might need an intervention. I mean, prayers are up for the folks in Clemson, South Carolina. Moose was going through it in our group chat earlier today. To be a Clemson Tiger fan today was to know pain because Troy jumped out to a 16-0 lead after Cade Klubnik had a pass tipped to the line of scrimmage. It was returned for a pick 6. They do go on to score 27 unanswered. They kind of figured out in the second half. But guys, I don't know at this point. I keep going back and forth. Is Cade a good quarterback? Is he not a good quarterback? Is Garrett Riley a good coordinator? Is he not a good coordinator? They don't have the bell cow running back quite yet. They're trying to figure out who that was, and they had some production in the second half, but the slow starts, man, as open as we think the ACC is, it's going to cost them again beyond LSU if they keep doing it this year. And you're going to look up and you're going to be 9-3 once again, and you may not get the miracle of the ACC championship game to bail you out.
Yeah. It's kind of bizarre to look at this and just say, what happened to Cade Klubnik and all those talented receivers? Why can they not put it together? Nothing changed. So what changed, right? Is it really just not having Phil Maffa and a strong run game like that throws the entire offense off? It could be something like that, but you really think that kind of returning production, that kind of returning talent would turn into something else. But yeah.
Has not been the case. Elsewhere, Lane Kiffin clearly has a Kentucky problem. They win by, 7 over the Cats. They trailed by 10 in the fourth quarter. And Austin Simmons, I haven't seen what his injury diagnosis was. He threw 2 interceptions early. Kentucky got 10 points off of that. We were, given the side-eye emoji to each other as we were watching that unfold at the SMU game. Ole Miss does come back. They put up some points, but Austin Simmons looks like he got his ankle rolled up on late in that game. Don't know what his status from next week will be. Kentucky kicks a field goal at the gun to just spite all the Ole Miss bettors. My hand is up there. I said Ole Miss would take care of business. I fully believe that Lane Kiffin could go on the road and get that done comfortably. Did not happen. So I don't really know what to take away from Ole Miss. They have so much talent on that roster, and yet they're struggling with a really bad Kentucky team. So I guess watch this space is my takeaway there. Guys, in the G5, let's round out the show with a couple of hitters here. Texas State wins the I-35 rivalry. They've made it back-to-back victories over the Roadrunners in an absolute shootout, 43-36. It's the first ever win for Texas State in the Dome, and they looked like a very complete team. Bo Sparks has himself another whale of a ball game, 155 yards receiving, 3 touchdowns. He will be mentioned in my helmet sticker post coming up, I guess, Sunday afternoon, maybe Monday if I can't get it out tomorrow afternoon. But the Cats, man, they looked good.
Yeah, and for all the back and forth yapping all week. It was really
great.
Honestly, it was fun to see Texas State back that up. Their fans were in it all week on Twitter, and it was really cool to see the team come out and back that up. So you'll love to see it. But man, when you think about just the supremacy race in Texas behind some of the bigger schools, Texas State just keeps making plays to move up that list, move into the Pac-12 next year, of course, but knocking off their rival 2 years in a row. They're moving up that program tier list very quickly in the Lone Star State.
And going to the Pac-12, taking a lot of momentum out west.
Yep.
We saw an Oregon State polo at the game this morning, and we were like, you know what? He's actually not that far from home. We are in Pac-12 country, after all. Very entertaining game. I made a tweet at one point that I had. Which game did I have on my TV? Whichever main game.
Border War. Probably
Border War on my TV, and I had the I-35 rivalry on my laptop, and it was incredibly entertaining, especially in that one where there was no defense being played. As soon as one team scored, you would have the other one fire right back down the field. Both quarterbacks were slinging it. But
wasn't it 2-0 at the end of the first quarter? I think it was 2-0 at the end of the first quarter. Texas
that would be news to me. I wasn't watching that early, but boy, they put on some points after that. Like I said, 43-36, the final score there. So yeah. I like the program that GJ is building down there in San Marcos. Ohio beats West Virginia, guys. I put out another tweet when this one went final with a timestamp, June 26th. I said West Virginia is on major upset alert. Here's why. Here's how Ohio wins. Parker Navarro backed that up. The Bobcats beat West Virginia. And listen, we know that West Virginia is in a tough spot, right? They had 50-plus new transfers. Rich Rod is building a new culture, a new identity. Outside of Jaheim White, I don't know that there's a lot of constants. But Ohio found a way to stop that offense, holding them to just 10 points, and then it was basically the Parker Navarro show. The leading passer for the game, the leading rusher for the game as well. Good for Ohio, and I think they are solidifying themselves not only as, maybe a dark horse for the playoff, but, man, I think they've got to be a favorite right up there to win the MAC once again.
Yeah, and they did it with Parker Navarro turning the ball over 3 times. So that was also really encouraging to see. Yes, he balled out. Yes, he led in those statistical categories, but he still made some mistakes, and they were able to overcome that. It felt like last week against Rutgers, they needed him to be perfect to stay in that game, but didn't need him to be perfect this week. The rest of the team stepped up around him as well.
Yeah, Mr. Worldwide puts in our chat. Shout out to Missouri State for their first ever FBS win, their first road win. They take down Marshall 21-20. How about that? I know there are a lot of very upset Marshall fans at how that game went. Program in flux, no doubt, with the coaching change and the total roster overhaul from this offseason. But good for the Bears getting that win. Jacksonville State beats Liberty. Garrett, maybe a changing of the guard in Conference USA is the Gamecocks, another team that we thought, well, surely they're kind of dead to rights this year. New coach, new scheme, whole new roster. And they go on and beat the Flames. As impressed as I think we are with Jacksonville State, this might be the end of the Liberty dynasty.
Yeah, I think changing of the guard is probably the right way to put it. And it's partially because Jacksonville State, they look fine, like they didn't play bad. But yeah, I think maybe Liberty's on the way out and maybe needs to just take a bow and exit stage left and just let the next team come up to go and win their conference.
And then finally, the last game I have in my notes, Louisville hangs on to beat James Madison 28-14. Really weird game from the Dukes. They came out early. They punched Louisville in the mouth defensively. It was a blast watching them fly around. They stopped Isaac Brown for the majority of that game. But then the play calling on offense made zero sense. And they couldn't commit to Alonzo Barnett. They couldn't commit to Matthew Sluka, the running quarterback. It just kind of felt like JMU got in their own way offensively. And that was ultimately what kept them from actually winning this game. This was a very tight game even until the last few seconds. Louisville adds a late touchdown, a very, very late touchdown, I think in the last 90 seconds or so, to kind of make it look like it was a more comfortable win. Still got the cover if you were on the Dukes in that game. But I think James Madison's going to be fine in the Sun Belt. I think they're still, alive for that playoff contention. But when you compare what you've seen from the Dukes versus maybe South Florida, Sunbelt champ might be the highest of their aspirations this year.
It feels like the American's coming for that spot this year. The American has had a great opening 2 weeks, and I expect it to keep going. One other game I had on my radar, guys, UNLV. It looked a little closer at the end, knocking off UCLA. Nico's not good, man.
He sucks.
Nico is not doing well out in Westwood. But yeah, shout out to UNLV. They figured it out on defense seemingly after a really bad opening against Idaho State, but big win. And I think they're 3-0 now. I can't remember who they had last week, but it should be 3-0.
Sam
start
Houston.
The season under Dan that's who it was.
Yeah,
Sam Houston.
bludgeon Sam Houston.
And Trey, I'm going to piggyback off of that for a second. The one that got away from UCLA, how about Dante Moore figuring it out with Oregon? Like, I know that Oklahoma State, not a very good team, right? Like, not super good. And I know that y'all had y'all's questions about Oregon. I was maybe a little bit higher on them in the offseason. But, like, man, if they're going to play quarterback like that, and if he's going to sling it like that, he had a couple nice throws in this game. I'm excited about the Ducks if he's throwing the rock.
Yeah, I said that on the live show. I said that on the live show last week. The throws that I saw against Montana State, competition aside, he was driving the ball in there like an NFL quarterback, and then he followed it up today with some incredible throws as well. Had one over the top that was just in the bucket. No defender could even sniff where that ball was. It was only going to ever be a touchdown or fall harmlessly incomplete. Yeah. He has looked good, and I guess maybe the final thing for the show tonight, like Mike Gundy's done in Stillwater, right? Like there is 69 to 3. It was the worst loss in Oklahoma State history.
Not nice.
They had not, I think 62 was the previous largest margin of victory. Guys, that was back in, I believe, 1905, if the tweet that I saw was correct, which was when Oklahoma became a state. Yikes.
You don't.
Yeah,
it's. Go ahead.
This has to be the end for Gundy. Like,
it's gotta be.
It should have been a couple of years ago, but he's dragged it out. And this last offseason, I know from a couple people that were closer to the situation that there was a lot of drama around that, and he basically saved it by saying, "I'll make some new coordinator hires," and he finally moved on from. I think it was his offensive coordinator. He just
the whole staff.
Move on from him.
He was the only returner. The entire staff was gone.
Well, there was like a long time. There's like a loyalty thing with his offensive coordinator for a long time. But he was like, "Okay, we're gonna finally move off of this," and he hired extremely questionable coaches. I think not necessarily bad coaches, but just they don't have the experience at that phase. And yeah, I don't understand what they're doing. I don't understand the goal or the vision right there. I think it's time to just reset. I know a lot of Oklahoma State fans feel the same way. So,
yeah. You don't want to set records that start with like a 1905 thing. That's not typically a good thing. But just the comments this week, that feels like a guy that just doesn't care anymore. Where you're literally self-sabotaging your program by saying that we can't pay our players. We need to talk about the Vandy game just really quickly too. I feel like Vandy, Virginia Tech was up 20-10 at halftime and lost that game 37-20.
I think it was 44-20. I think they added.
There you go.
One.
I missed the last touchdown. 44-20 after, and Bryce in the chat is 100% right.
They
the
do.
Virginia Tech fan base deserves better, and I think they will. I think the Brent Pryde experiment is very close to being done.
Yeah, I put together a tweet. I think when Vandy maybe went up, I can't remember if it was 30 or 37, and the broadcast showed, the entire student section immediately heading to the exits. They knew it was over. There was no chance. We weren't even halfway through the fourth quarter. I think this might have been at the very beginning of the fourth quarter, and the fans knew it. Yeah, Bryce is saying the post-game presser didn't sound good for Pry. There's no way that they're recovering from this. It doesn't feel like the talent's on the roster. The heart is not in this coaching staff. They just kind of looked apathetic as Vandy just started to roll points over them. And so I put out a tweet. Didn't say fire Brent Pry, but just said, hey, look, this fan base deserves so much better and changes are needed. And the fan base found it very quickly and was like, please, just make it happen. So I don't know what the budgetary situation is for Virginia Tech, but Brent Pry was always a little bit of a gamble, and I don't know that we were all super excited about the hire. I think people like me certainly talked ourselves into liking it, and it's going to be a new culture, and we're going to prioritize physicality, and it just hadn't happened for a variety of reasons. The talent has not been there. The results have not been there. They have not beaten a Power 4 opponent in non-conference play, guys, since 2017, and that streak continued tonight. That's brutal.
Yeah,
I mean, that program deserves so much
crazy.
better.
Brent Pry might be another one of those guys who needs a Tips Treats box or an edible arrangement from DeBoer, because that's another one that's taken some of the attention off of him right now.
Yeah.
Whoever fires their coach first gets to talk to John Gruden first. So just keep that in mind, guys.
Is that a good thing? Are we sure
He
about
wants
that?
to be in the college game.
I know he wants. I would love to be a college coach. Like, sure, I'll coach at the SEC.
Right, call me, yeah.
That doesn't mean it's happening. Anyway, all right. Well, let's wrap up with that. Just past midnight Central here on Saturday night. Thank you guys, the Jimmies and Joes, for hanging out in the live chat with us. Watching, if you're listening to this podcast later on, we are live on each Saturday night after the primetime game goes final. We'd love to have you join us live with us. If you are not subscribed to us, at 3 Tech Pod is where you can find us as well. Love to continue the conversation and talk ball with you all week long. For Trey Reeves and Garrett Turney, I'm Mitch Mason. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Until next time, so long, everybody.